So let's start by talking to Corey in Winnsboro, South Carolina. Corey, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about today?
I just want to talk about like things happening over and over again.
What?
Like certain events happening over and over again. Like for instance,
Like deja vu?
What is it?
Like deja vu, like that kind of thing?
No, I'm talking about like, for instance, like great events happening over and over again, like surviving a 9/11 and then coming back from cancer and circumstances like that. You got to take in consideration as being something. You have to use that as some type of form of evidence, you know?
Evidence for what?
I would say that fate works in some way or shape or form.
Well, Corey, can I ask you a question? So if
I can
surviving cancer is evidence for God, does that mean that everyone who dies of cancer is evidence against God? What about all the poor people who died during 9/11? Are their deaths evidence against God?
Well, I would just say certain events. Now, I'm not going to say like 100% of the time.
No, you're picking and choosing, aren't you?
Like, not picking and choosing per se. It's just like, okay, an event where there's no other option. Like, how would you survive this scenario any other way?
Well, it sounds like you're picking and choosing. There are lots of people who survived cancer, and there are a lot of people who survived the terror attacks on 9/11, just like there are a lot of people who are surviving the coronavirus outbreak. If you're saying that their survival counts as evidence for God, then what you have to take into account to have the other side of that is that their deaths have to be evidence against God, right? Otherwise, you're just picking and choosing. Also,
I see where you're getting at, and I understand that.
Also, one other question. Who gave them cancer?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be God as well? I mean,
it would.
Yeah,
I would say cancer is an organism. I'd say cancer is an organism that has nothing to do with like a divine being.
So wait, God didn't create this organism? Who did?
Well, I also believe science and religion go hand in hand. I'm not like a person that's going to tell you something was like the world couldn't be designed any other way. I know that's not true. I know that our planet itself literally is not feasible for like anybody. I know this because there's prickly spricks on the ground. There's big buckets of water that we cannot drink. So I know that's not true, but I also know that, hey, there's something that has to be guiding certain people. You get what I'm saying?
Well, why only certain people? I think this kind of goes back to what Eric says. Say there's somebody, I'm sure there were plenty of people who prayed to be healed from cancer and were not healed, right? So what happens to those people? Do we just dismiss it and only count the ones that seem to correspond with our worldview? Or are you saying that everybody who prays to get healed from cancer does?
Well, I think anything that doesn't have an interaction with God personally, like for instance, I know there's events where
no, hold on, Corey, stop.
Because God...
Corey, hold on. Let's stick to cancer and 9/11. Otherwise, we're going to be all over the place.
All right.
Okay. So first off, cancer is not an organism. You know that. Just in case you didn't know, it's a bad cell mutation where those cells start replicating all over the place and it doesn't stop. It's not an organism. It's your own body defecting. But even if we met you where you're at, which we did, and we granted that, okay, let's just call it an organism, you're still talking around the fact that you're counting one side of your argument. Now, we care about, engaging this because it's something that both of us, both V and I personally have experienced in church. It's something we experienced growing up as Christians. We were told that everything is evidence of the glory of God and that everything bears the mark of design. And a lot of people would bring out these stories, your personal testimonies, right? Corey, do you have a personal testimony?
Yeah, I mean, my personal testimony.
Don't care, but you have one. Well, here's the thing, man. That counts as anecdotal evidence, and you've got to be really, really careful about the way that you evaluate those things. I know that I've brought up examples of people who were put in terrible clinical trials where vast amounts of people died that just didn't work. But let me give you a different one. I went on a cruise a couple of years back. It was the first cruise and the only cruise I've ever been on. And I got into an argument with an acupuncturist on that cruise.
Sorry, I'm over here just like, of course you did.
Well, so here's the thing, is he was saying that people were being cured of these huge diseases and afflictions because of the acupuncture. And so I asked him if he had evidence for it, and he brought me this binder full of handwritten letters. And if I brought you a binder full of handwritten letters of people saying this cured me, would that be convincing to you, Corey?
Say it again one more time so I can clarify.
Sure, no worries. So I'm talking about acupuncture. I'm taking it out of the realm of religion so we can just engage the idea. And I'm saying that I got into an argument with an acupuncturist. And when I asked him to bring me evidence, he brought me a binder full of handwritten letters from people who said that acupuncture had cured them of various diseases. So if I brought you that binder of handwritten letters, would that be convincing to you about the efficacy of acupuncture?
No.
Why?
Because I would have to document those letters and research those letters and making sure that they're in a reliable source.
Well, get this. I want to help brush up, the way you do this investigation. And the best way to do it is to go, okay, here's your sample of letters. How many people were treated with acupuncture? And how many of those people treated wrote a letter? If everyone that was treated wrote a letter, then okay, you can go to that part. But definitely make sure that you're getting a representative sample. Otherwise, someone could be cherry picking only what works and only giving you evidence of what seems to have worked instead of putting it in context. And so when this person said, oh, my acupuncture has healed people, the thing is, spontaneous remission is a thing. When it comes to pain management, people's bodies change and sometimes that pain goes away. There are lots of times that people are misdiagnosed. And I mean, there's so many different reasons that have nothing to do with the acupuncture that could be coincidental. I'm sure, have you ever heard the say a prayer, take an aspirin, and 2 hours later your headache will go away?
I have. I actually have.
Right. So I think that the aspirin's the thing that's working, but we want to make sure that we're cutting out those coincidental things, right? We want to make sure that people having gone to acupuncture was just coincidental, or if it was the causal link. And so when people come up and they bring testimonies forward about the evidence of God and the goodness of God in their lives, right? And they say, oh, all of these people that survived 9/11, oh my gosh, all of these people who survived cancer. They're not contextual.
Can I ask one question? I see where you're going, and I can see where my point is a little kind of crazy, but don't you think it's kind of weird with all the people who believe it?
No, not at all. I had no idea how to parse evidence until much later in my life. I think, Corey, that you're using the best tools at your disposal right now. And I think that by sharpening those tools and by giving you better ones, you're going to get to the better conclusions consistently. So I don't think that's a problem. And I think that there are a whole lot of smart people who just have a tool that may not work so well. And I think this is an example of one of them.
Well, it's also that it's indoctrinated in our society so much. So it's.
I'm sorry, I kind of missed that. Could you say that?
I understand that.
No, I totally agree with you, Corey. Yeah. I believe what you're saying, Corey, is that the reason we jump to, prayer works, is because we're told prayer works in this society, because this is, there are so many people in this particular culture who believe in prayer. Of course, that's going to be something that we jump to as an explanation because that's already part of the culture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
Okay. So what do you think would be a good way to investigate that? Do you think that's a good reason to come to a truth claim that a lot of people believe?
No, I'd say it needs to be investigated.
Agreed.
In a logical way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And we fully encourage you to do that investigation. I think that it's a very, very sad thing to see the number of people who believe and pray and die from the illness that they were trying to prevent with prayer only. You know, I have people in my life who resorted to, outside medicines, healings and pseudoscience to try and cure real world diseases. And I got to see those people die, and I miss them. And I don't think that they were dumb. I think that the tools that they had, that they thought they had a understanding of reality that wasn't mapping to the one that we're living in. And it's important, man. It's really important.
I just like talking to y'all because y'all tell me stuff that I didn't even think about. It's like usually when I ask the question, and I literally search for the question, but I don't get no answers. Like if I go up to a preacher, they just say, it's God. Don't question God. It's His will.
Mm-hmm.
Let His will be. And I just don't see that as any logical way to come to something.
Yeah.
So I got a question I need to be answered.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember being so upset just later on looking back at it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have questions. Like, it was never framed that way. If you had questions and you wanted to investigate, it was a bad thing. It was called a crisis. You're in a crisis of faith. Oh no, what you need to do is you need to double down and try and stop thinking about it. And it's harsh.
Yeah, and it's ineffective because clearly Corey didn't get the answers he wanted, so here he is. And honestly, I think I'm very curious to hear, if you call back, what other questions you got. If you ever have a question that your preacher can't answer for you, we're here.
Definitely.
All right. I appreciate y'all.
We
appreciate you too.
I might even become a patron just because I do want questions and stuff. Even though we're on the opposite sides of the coin, I'm going to do the research and whatever I come to. I mean, hey.
At least you got there for good reasons.
Yeah, and if you find out some cool stuff, call in again and let us know about it because we're here looking for the truth as well.
Mm-hmm.